Welcome back to another edition of We Rise Fighting Labor Podcast. We bring you today's labor news, history, and analysis from the U.S. and around the world. This is a podcast you listen to with your fellow workers organizing on the shop floor. This is a podcast you listen to before walking into your union meeting. As always, I'm Rico Rutia, here with my co-host, Brian Pfeiffer. In this episode of We Rise Fighting, Brian is going to talk to us about Earth Day, also going to bring us the report on Palestine. We're also going to talk about the United Auto Workers as it relates to Mercedes, Volkswagen, and CNH Industrial. And finally, we're going to close the show by talking about Portland teachers. So please stay tuned. Also, please check out, I myself put out a special edition of We Rise Fighting where I focus on an introduction to corporate research. All right, so that's going to be published tonight as well, and tonight is April 21st, 2024, and it'll just be on our Spreaker account or YouTube or Spotify, however it is you may follow us, and it'll probably just be called something simple like Introduction to Corporate Research Part 1, something like that. But it is exactly that, just an introduction, where to find some basic documents with some basic information to get some information going for your movement, for your struggle, for your union organizing drive, whatever the case may be. And so tonight I'm having minor technical issues, which means we won't be able to share any music, which is a bummer because we usually love sharing music at the beginning of the show. And tonight we were hoping to share the song Freedom by Liz Wright. So apologies for that, but in its place, I would like to share a poem and a couple of excerpts from a couple of my favorite books by a couple of my favorite Marxist writers. I'll start with the poem. The poem is by Langston Hughes, and it's simply called Revolution, and it reads as follows. Great mob that knows no fear, come here and raise your hand against this man of iron and steel and gold, who's bought and sold you, each one, for the last 1,000 years. Come here, great mob that has no fear, and tear him limb from limb, split his golden throat ear to ear, and end his time forever, now, this year. Great mob that knows no fear. Again, that was the poem Revolution by Langston Hughes. Up next, the first excerpt that I would like to offer is from a book called The Junius Pamphlet by Rosa Luxemburg. And again, this is an excerpt. This is not a poem, but I think it reads like a poem, and I think about it every day. And so just wanted to share it and read it as if it were a poem. So it goes like this. Violated, dishonored, wading in blood, dripping filth. There stands bourgeois society. This is it, in reality. Not all spick and span and moral, with pretense to culture, philosophy, ethics, order, peace, and the rule of law, but the ravening beast, the witch's Sabbath of anarchy, a plague to culture and humanity. Thus it reveals itself in its naked form. So again, that's Rosa Luxemburg from the Junius Pamphlet. And the last excerpt that I would like to read is from the book State and Revolution by Vladimir Lenin. And this is a book that I'm reading in a reading group right now. And within this piece, Lenin actually quotes Frederick Engels. So this is actually Frederick Engels' words, but it's usually associated with this particular piece by Lenin. And Engels' words basically just speak to what the state is. What is the state in a society? What is the government, if you will, though it's not a perfect definition of what we mean by state. When we're talking about the state, we're talking about something in more theoretical terms and more, more of an idea of what it is. So basically, the state right now would be the government and all its agencies and its armed wings, such as the police, the FBI, the CIA, the military. Right, all of that is the state, but it also includes, like social security services and unemployment services and stuff like that. Like all of that is the state. And the state is there to help legitimize a class society. In other words, a class of haves and have-nots. So that is the point of the state in kind of simpler terms. And I just wanted to offer that because this is kind of a dense excerpt, and I just thought an introduction would be helpful. But the excerpt itself is worth reading and reading several times, as I did, to help it sink in, because I find it really insightful. And I've carried this idea in my head for many years now, and I walk out and I test the idea in what I see in current events and social relations, and nothing has been able to shake this definition. So the excerpt is as follows. The state is a product of society at a certain stage of development. It is the admission that this society has become entangled in an insoluble contradiction with itself, that it has split into irreconcilable antagonisms which it is powerless to dispel. But in order that these antagonisms, these classes with conflicting economic interests, might not consume themselves and society in fruitless struggle, it becomes necessary to have a power seemingly standing above society that would alleviate the conflict and keep it within the bounds of quote-unquote order. And this power, arisen out of society, but placing itself above it and alienating itself more and more from it, is the state.
This past weekend, Earth Day events took place across North America and the world, and they will be continuing this week. In a 2019 article that unfortunately is still relevant, author Mike Shane writes in fightingwords.net, that's fighting-words.net, quote, the U.S. military is the world's largest institutional consumer of fossil fuels and the world's worst producer of greenhouse gas emissions and many other toxic pollutants. The U.S. military accounts for almost 80% of the federal government's fossil fuel consumption. If the Pentagon were a country, it would rank 47th in annual fossil fuel consumption, ahead of 140 countries. Not included in this emissions total are those produced by the Pentagon's massive use of concrete, electricity consumption, and other resources that also produce emissions. The production of concrete is one of the major sources of emissions and other forms of pollution. The U.S. has more than 800 bases in more than 130 countries, imposing its neocolonial agenda on the people of the world, writes the author Mike Shane. In addition, there are 6,000 military facilities within the U.S. Using its network of military installations, the Pentagon steals the world's resources, particularly fossil fuels, on behalf of Wall Street and the capitalist class, and ensures that such resources remain the private property of the billionaire class, writes Shane. Rick, what's your thoughts on what Mike Shane is writing here?
I think Mike Shane captures it all right there with one of the sentences that you mentioned about the 800 bases in 130 countries. I think that speaks entirely to it, as the Pentagon being one of the largest polluters the largest polluter in the planet, rather. Yeah, I think that I'm glad to see this being a part of Earth Day consciousness and environmental consciousness and eco-consciousness, really. I think it's long overdue. And also, Brian, you and I have talked about it before here on We Rise Fighting, as far as the military industrial complex being, the largest employer in the world. So I think that's also something to take note of in our minds when we talk about how to dismantle this stuff, how to combat it, how to struggle against it. But for now, yeah, it is good to see the Pentagon being mentioned as one of the largest polluters in the world.
All right, thanks, Rick. And now we're going to turn to Palestine, which we promised listeners at We Rise Fighting that we would be raising Palestine in every one of our episodes. This year at Labor Notes 2024, just north of Chicago in Rosemont, Illinois, Labor Notes held a 4-day conference, their biannual conference, and Labor for Palestine members were there and many other Palestinian support solidarity activists. At least 4 official panels were held at Labor Notes to discuss the Palestinian struggle. Other actions took place, including meetings throughout the conference. Most notable was a Labor for Palestine protest Friday night at the conference, where 2 protesters were arrested by the police after hundreds of protesters faced off against the police, demanding the release of the protesters. They were released. At the April 19th Labor for Palestine rally outside the hotel, where the Labor Notes conference was held, union and community participants from across North America, Brazil, and other locations demand that an end to U.S. Israeli genocidal apartheid, with the demand an immediate end to all U.S. aid, prominent among other demands. Labor for Palestine contingents from Wisconsin, Chicago, Boston, and throughout the Midwest and beyond participated in the rally and spoke, and also many from Detroit. Hundreds of Labor for Palestine leaflets were distributed at the rally and at the conference, bringing Palestine before the few thousand conference participants. Featured speakers at this year's Labor Notes included UAW President Shawn Fain, Association of Flight Attendants CWA President Sarah Nelson, and David Van Dusen, former president of the Vermont AFL-CIO, who we interviewed on our last episode here at We Rise Fighting, episode number 80. Participants of many current union battles, including many youth, gave presentations on campaigns, including at Starbucks and union organizing in the U.S. South, with the role of historically disenfranchised workers highlighted, in particular Black and brown workers, and also many lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer workers participating in many ways at the conference. For updates and videos, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a pretty heavy-duty list there. Just right there, Shawn Fain from the UAW, Sarah Nelson from the Association of Flight Attendants, and David Van Dusen, who we had on the show. You know, Shawn Fain, of course, because of the stuff that happened with the UAW and the strike and his leadership around that. Very inspiring. And also Sarah Nelson, for people who don't know who Sarah Nelson is. She's, I would say, one of the more militant union leaders out there, president of the Association of Flight Attendants, and also just has spoken about things like, you know, just general strikes and shutting it down and, you know, just very direct action oriented. So that's a pretty heavy duty list. And yeah, just wanted to just highlight for our listeners in general, you know, if you've never been to a Labor Notes conference or have only heard of it through here, it's a pretty cool conference to go to. You basically get trade unionists from around the world converging for 3 or 4 days in Chicago or the outskirts of Chicago and exchanging information, exchanging strategies, it's exchanging ideas, just looking to connect with other trade unionists. So if you've never been able to go, we do recommend it. And also check out Labor Notes because, you know, they publish regularly at labornotes.org. That's labornotes.org.
All right, thanks, Rick. And for more information about the Labor for Palestine events and updates from that conference, you can check out laborforpalestine.net, and that's where we get a lot of our content from here for We Rise Fighting Palestine reports. And as we speak to you right now, there is a battle raging at Columbia and University and Barnard College in New York City. We're using this only just to give reports from MSNBC, but also there's going to be information from a union later down our report. Despite brutal arrests and other attacks by administrators, security cops, and the White House, student demonstrators continue their Gaza solidarity encampment at Columbia, demanding the university divest from companies complicit in genocide. The student demands include Columbia University divestment from companies complicit in genocide, transparency of Colombia's investments, and full amnesty for all students facing repression. Israel Hersey, a student leader of the encampment and an organizer for Colombia's university's apartheid divest group, wrote on X, quote, "In my 3 years at Barnard College, I have never been reprimanded or received any disciplinary warnings. I just received notice that I am one of 3 students suspended for standing in solidarity with Palestinians facing a genocide." She continued, quote, "Those of us in Gaza Solidarity Encampment will not be intimidated. We will stand resolute until our demands are met," end quote. These students are receiving support from many faculty, students, staff, and community members. Their encampment was dismantled by campus security with assistance by the New York cops, but they rebuilt their encampment and they will remain steadfast according to their reports. The Student Workers of Colombia, UAW Local 2710, with 3,000 members at the university, posted on its Facebook page April 20th the statement, quote, "Labor solidarity against repression of protest," with the message, quote, "SWC members were among those arrested and suspended by Colombia on April 18th for taking action for Palestine. Stand with our union siblings and the rest of the students and send a message that the labor movement is in solidarity with these brave activists. Sign our letter today." And listeners can go to facebook.com SWCUAW or studentworkersofcolumbia.com. And Columbia is spelled COLUMBIA. The struggle against U.S.-Israel genocidal apartheid and other facets of the U.S. war machine comes amid the U.S. House passing a bill this weekend authorizing at least $95 billion in aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The Pentagon budget annually is now approaching $1 trillion. $1 trillion. And as the U.S. pours tens of billions into Israel in outright funding and in military equipment and hardware. Meanwhile, students like those at Columbia face stratospheric student debt, housing costs are rising astronomically, inflation increases, attacks on pro-Palestine students and workers at universities increase, and ever more austerity is aimed at poor and working people in the United States and in other Western nations. And Rick and I here at We Rise Fighting are proud to stand by these students, and we send them solidarity, and we say to hell with an administration that supports genocidal apartheid, and solidarity with the students and workers at Columbia and Barnard College. And we'll continue to have updates on this raging struggle that's happening as we speak. Following up with this, May Day actions worldwide will be taking place in cities all across the world, including in the U.S. For more information, see the World Federation of Trade Unions website and social media. And there are many organizations, of course, within states in the U.S., such as Voces de la Frontera in Wisconsin, that are organizing May Day marches in Madison and Milwaukee. And this will be taking place with various other organizations, including union support across the U.S. This year, there are plans for many Palestine solidarity delegations within May Day marches. Some slogans that will be raised up include "No borders in the workers' struggle," "No human being is illegal," and "From Palestine to the Rio Grande, stop the U.S. war machine." And also, we're excited here at We Rise Fighting to announce that there will be a freedom flotilla to end the siege on Gaza. The Palestinian Youth Movement is supporting this action, and they put out a statement on their Facebook page that says, "Setting sail for Gaza with 4 ships, 1,000 crew members, and over 5,000 tons of supplies. The 2024 Freedom Flotilla to Gaza will be the largest of its kind to ever attempt to break Israel's siege." Following months of preparation, logistical coordination, and recruitment efforts, the 2024 Gaza Freedom Flotilla is ready to set sail. This coming week, a crew of around 1,000 people will attempt what their governments have so far lacked the courage or conviction to do. They will try to break Israel's 17-year blockade of Gaza in order to deliver life-saving food, medicine, and supplies to millions of Palestinians living under siege. The statement from the Palestinian Youth Movement continues. Multiple flotillas have previously attempted to break the siege, most notably the Mavi Maramara in 2010, a ship that Israel occupation forces raided before going on to kill 10 of the crew members aboard. The hope in 2024 is that the flotilla's much larger size and the unprecedented international pressure on Israel will prevent a similar outcome. Israel has issued warnings regarding the current flotilla set to sail this week. Crew members have declared their intent to sail anyway. People of conscience everywhere, and most of all Palestinians in Gaza themselves, are saluting their bravery and determination. As Palestinians in Gaza wait to receive the flotilla, it is incumbent upon us to do everything in our power to protect those aboard. We must escalate our mobilization efforts from wherever we are to demand the safe passage of the flotilla to the shores of Gaza. 1,000 crew members and 2.3 million Palestinians under siege in Gaza are depending on us to step up our mobilization efforts in order to ensure their safe crossing to occupied Palestine. It is our duty to heed their call, says the Palestinian Youth Movement. For more information, you can see the Palestinian Youth Movement on social media. This week, much help will be needed in sharing the information on social media and wherever we can to ensure the safety of the Freedom Flotilla participants. Please share the word as far and as wide as we can and have events and whatever we can do to help the flotilla and our Palestinian friends that are facing a genocidal apartheid assault from the U.S. and Israel in solidarity with the flotilla. Here in Detroit, in the U.S., on May 24th to the 26th, People's Conference for Palestine. A People's Conference for Palestine will take place in downtown Detroit. Hashtag People's Conference for Palestine, one word. And the website is People's Conference for Palestine.org. And there's a whole variety of information on there, including on how to register and housing, among other necessary items to attend that conference. So that's again in Detroit on May 24th to 26th this year, 2024, People's Conference for Palestine. And now we're going to go talk to the developments that are happening with the United Auto Workers. As we mentioned, Brother Sean Fain was at Labor Notes this weekend describing many of these events. And Rick will talk about the historic vote that has just taken place this weekend at Volkswagen. Before we discuss that though, the next vote will be taking place for Mercedes workers in Alabama to vote for union UAW May 13th to the 17th, 2024. So 5,000 Mercedes workers will have an opportunity to vote to form their union in less than a month. The election will be held in person at the Mercedes plant, May 13th to 17th in Vance, Alabama. The vote will be administered by the National Labor Relations Board, or NLRB. And this is a report from the UAW.org. That's UAW.org. Quote, workers at our plant are ready for this moment, said Jeremy Kimbrell, a Mercedes worker at the Vance plant in Alabama. We are ready to vote yes because we are ready to win our fair share. We are going to end the Alabama discount and replace it with what our state actually needs. Workers sticking together and sticking by our community, says Kimbrell. Quote, the time is now, said Letitia Henry, a Mercedes worker at the Vance plant. She added, it's time to regain family work-life balance and make history at Mercedes. I want this to be a job that generation after generation would be proud to have. The vote at Mercedes comes just a few weeks after workers at Volkswagen voted on unionizing with UAW in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And Rick will talk more about that. Should workers at both plants vote to unionize, which they already have at Volkswagen, nearly 10,000 auto workers across the South will have voted to join UAW in less than a month. In addition to Mercedes and Volkswagen, thousands more auto workers have signed union cards in recent months with public campaigns at Hyundai in Montgomery, Alabama, and Toyota in Troy, Missouri. Workers at more than 24 other facilities are actively organizing. Billy Guyton, A Mercedes worker at the Vance plant says, "We're tired of Mercedes executives rolling things back. We're going to roll our union forward." That's right, brothers and sisters. We are here at We Rise Fighting. Congratulate you on the vote at Volkswagen and wish you well on next up for Mercedes. And for more information, listeners can go to uaw.org, uaw.org. And Rick will take us from here, but first we'll just remind readers to check out the great organizing that's happening in the South. You can go to UAW website and Facebook page, also formations such as the Southern Workers Assembly. That's the Southern Workers Assembly, and also the Union of Southern Service Workers, and a variety of other action has taken place in the South with workers moving forward. And it's a wonderful development, and Rick will tell us about one of those very important historic developments right now with Volkswagen workers.
No doubt, going to get right into that. But also just wanted to mention, in case you're new to labor stuff, labor news, labor theory, labor history in the U.S., the South has always been recognized as being a place where labor can be more exploited and the environment can be more exploited. That's one of the things that has drawn international corporations to set up shop in the South, is the lax labor and environmental laws. So for the United Auto Workers to have this victory is a big deal in that respect. Also, just in the historical respect for labor, the South has been a challenge for labor to unionize and organize. So hats off to those to the Volkswagen workers that I'm about to talk about. So caught up with the news today, and yeah, just wanted to see exactly what went on with the Volkswagen workers. And I came across a couple of articles. I'm actually going to lean on the article from NPR, but just wanted to make reference to another article from ABC, only because that article was called "Why the UAW Vote at Volkswagen is Significant for Workers Across the U.S." That just the headline of that article tells me they're paying attention. They're noticing this sort of thing. So just wanted to mention that there were a few articles on this subject to pick from. Again, I chose the one from NPR. The headline on there reads as follows: Volkswagen workers vote yes to unionizing, igniting UAW's push to organize the South. And it reads as follows: workers at the Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga in Tennessee have voted overwhelmingly to join the United Auto Workers, setting a new trajectory for labor unions in the American South. With 3,613 ballots counted, the final tally was 2,628 votes in favor of joining the UAW and 985 votes against. So that's almost triple the amount of people who voted against voted in favor of joining the UAW. And some 73% of workers voted in favor of unionizing. Now, that's a huge number. That's a significant number. And, as I'm reading this article, I'm wondering if they would have seen these types of numbers 10 years ago and exactly what kind of effect the rolling strike of last year by the UAW had on this. Because if you ask me, and I wish I could survey some of these workers, but if you ask me, they had to have been inspired by the strike that took place last year. I think this is the type of moments that a lot of workers were waiting for. I think a lot of union leaders try to keep the peace, try to negotiate behind closed doors, try to work things out through legislation and electing the right Democrats, and just essentially remove themselves from the struggle. Meanwhile, I think a lot of workers just want to see the struggle and be part of the struggle because things in the workplace are unjust and they're feeling it. Everything from the paycheck to the repetitive motion disorders to the lack of health care, things like that. So I think workers were waiting for this sort of thing, if you ask me. The article continues. The UAW pulled off the resounding victory after two prior defeats in a region deeply skeptical of unions, and despite repeated warnings from state Republican leaders and the business community that unionizing would be a big mistake. Of course, the Republicans are saying that. From early in the count, it was clear that the UAW had won many workers over. Yes votes quickly began outnumbering no votes by about 3-1, a lead that held throughout the night. Chattanooga plant was previously a place of UAW defeat. All eyes were on the Volkswagen vote, given two previous defeats for the United Auto Workers' attempt to organize the same Chattanooga plant in 2014 and 2019. See, this is what I'm saying. It's like they had lost there twice before, but this time around, I think because of everything that happened last year, including, of course, the UAW, I think these workers were just emboldened. That's one of the things that we talk about on the show is that when a group of workers sees another group of workers be victorious, when they stand up and just demand rights and stand up militantly against their employers, they're emboldened by that and they want to do that. We've seen that here. We've seen that with the strike wave of the teachers several years ago. So there's no reason that the workers at this Volkswagen plant couldn't have been vibing off the same. Similar efforts at several other auto manufacturing plants in the South have also failed over the years. With the vote at Volkswagen now wrapped up, the union is turning its attention to the Mercedes-Benz plant in Vance, Alabama, as Brian just mentioned, where a union election will begin May 13 for some 5,200 workers. So that's some news from UAW. Got a little bit more here. And this one's a little bit more personal for us, for Brian and I, as we were part of this struggle in Racine, Wisconsin against CNH Industrial. CNH Industrial, for the benefit of our listeners, in case you haven't heard these episodes of ours, CNH Industrial is a company that produces tractors and agricultural machinery. And they have a plant in Racine, Wisconsin, where 2 years ago workers were on strike. And Brian and I started participating and extending some solidarity efforts towards that strike, including a visit to Racine, to UAW Local 180, where we organized essentially a mass picket around town to make some noise and put pressure on CNH. So we are now catching up with some news from CNH. It's not good news, unfortunately. This is coming from biztimes.com, and the article reads as follows. London-based manufacturer CNH Industrial plans to lay off more than 200 workers at its Racine facility and shift that work to Mexico, according to a Wednesday statement from Senator Tammy Baldwin. So they're quoting a statement from a Wisconsin senator here, just to be clear on where some of this information is coming from. CNH Industrial is a manufacturer of agricultural equipment, including tractors and combines. The latest round of layoffs is intended to reduce costs by $150 million as part of a company-wide reorganization, according to a statement. $150 million. $150 million. They're looking to reduce costs by $150 million. Like, get out of here. Get out of here. CNH Industrial reported revenues of $24.7 billion in 2023, and that was up 5% from 2022. Full year net income, in other words, full year profits, was reported at $2.3 million compared to $2 million in 2022. They don't need to do this. They don't need to do this. Agricultural machinery has been made in Racine by your workers for over 175 years. They have made Case New Holland into the international manufacturing powerhouse it is today, wrote Baldwin in a letter to Scott Wine, chief executive officer of CNH Industrial. Now, that part did stick out to me, Brian, just because when I ask myself, all right, what do these political representatives, what kind of power can they put behind the workers? What kind of power can they put behind the workers' movement? And this is typical of the sort of thing I see. Okay, this person, the Senator Baldwin, although maybe on the correct side of this and in solidarity, like the best this person can do is write a letter to Scott Wine. It's so kind of brings that whole thing up again, right? Where is the workers' power? Is it in direct action or is it in hoping for advocacy from these political representatives, from these Democrats and liberals? The article continues, moving production to Mexico, as you are considering, would not only be a slap in the face of the workers who have given so much, it would destroy the institutional knowledge that your workforce has developed over decades of building agricultural equipment.
Yeah, Rick, I'd just like to go back to your previous point. It's a lovely quote, but there's no threats in there. For example, this company, we have to do the research, of course, but I think it's a safe bet that this company has received all kinds of quote unquote incentives, which is corporate welfare from the city of Racine, from the state of Wisconsin, federal quote unquote subsidies. But there's no threat, not quote, to pull those.
No.
All it is a letter.
Yeah. Yeah. Why would anyone be afraid of that? Why would Scott Wine, the CEO of CNH Industrial, put the brakes on that? So in January of 2023, more than 1,000 United Auto workers in both Racine and Burlington, Iowa, who work for CNH Industrial, ratified a new contract following a months-long strike. The strike began in 2022 and lasted for more than 260 days, which again, this is part of what Brian and I got involved in. And you can listen to those previous episodes. It's under CNH Industrial or Racine or Local 180, but they're in there. The new contract included wage increases, shift premium increases, classification upgrades, and other improvements, according to the UAW. So, we just got this news this week. Brian and I, we haven't reached out to Local 180 yet, but I mean, right off the bat, my knee-jerk reaction is this was retaliation for the strike. This was retaliation for making so much noise. So we will keep you up to date on anything else that may come about, what's happening at CNH Industrial. But unfortunately, this is the news that we received as well this week. Moving ahead to the final article for today's news broadcast. This is coming from OregonLive.com. And the headline reads as follows. This is about the teachers union. Complaint charges Portland's teacher unions with prolonging 2023 strike, seeks 100 million for families. Okay, now check this out. A complaint filed Thursday on behalf of 4 parents. All right, I had to highlight that. This is on behalf of 4 parents. Alleges that the Portland Association of Teachers unnecessarily prolonged the strike that shut down schools for 11 days in November by trying to bargain over topics that the school district was not legally obligated to discuss. The complaint, which seeks relief from an administrative law judge for the State Employment Labor Relations Board, asks for $100 million in damages for families around the district lost academic, social, and work time due to the lengthy school closures. The complaint also asked the judge to void the contract that teachers and the district eventually agreed upon. So this is going really, really, really above and beyond and full throttle for 4 parents. This is for 4 parents. $100 million in damages for 4 parents. And the complaint is asking for the contract to be deemed void. That's a lot to ask on behalf of 4 parents. Who could possibly be doing this? Let's carry on and read the article. The suit was filed by Chicago-based firm Hughes and Sir, which has filed similar complaints in other states where there have been educator strikes, including Illinois, New Jersey, and Kentucky. A judge recently dismissed a similar lawsuit from the same firm in Massachusetts. One of the partners in the firm, Daniel Sir, is a former policy director for former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, who was nationally known for his fight against collective bargaining for teachers' unions in Wisconsin. The local counsel is Jeff Eager, a Republican political consultant and attorney who was the former mayor of Bend. There you go. So that's the strategy. We've talked about it on this show, about all the hoops, about all the jumps you have to go through in order to just go on a legal strike in the first place. And then once you carry out either illegal or even just effective, because we stand behind illegal strikes here as well, because it's so difficult to organize a strike and so much of the effective stuff is illegal. Once you go through all the hoops, be it illegal or illegal strike, then you have stuff like this come down the pike. $100 million complaint on behalf of 4 parents being filed by people who are close to Scott Walker. Wow. That's the state of that's the state of fighting labor right now. That's where we're at. So just wanted to put that out there. And Brian, what's up? You looks like you got something to say.
That's right, Rick. I'd like to make 2 points about this. That this is a very important lesson that you're raising here for workers in community, especially those in unions. Our enemies are united. They might disagree on certain ways to do things, but they're united. They have money, they have resources, and they work very closely together. You see these connections here, Scott Walker, the law firms, they probably have right-wing think tanks behind this. And so just raising that, it's a good lesson for those of us in labor and unions, how, unity on our side is so important in solidarity and making sure that we might disagree on some things in labor, but we have to stay united and work together to defeat those who want to break our unions and put us out on the streets. And I can testify, being in Wisconsin, that the absolute horrendous consequences of what's happened here with the union busting still plays out to this day. The other item that we'd like to raise for this is the right wing and these lawyers, they understand that to attack public entities like public education, one of the first things they need to do is try to either whittle down or destroy or bust or make ineffective the public sector unions. Because once you can destroy the public sector unions or really whittle them down and not make them as powerful as they once were or ineffective, what that does is it puts you in a whole arena where school boards can be attacked and curriculum can be changed, and all kinds of right-wing initiatives are much easier to pass and ram through and become effective without that union resistance, and how that harms our students and our communities. And so they know exactly what they're doing, and they know that the principal number one thing that they have to do is attack the unions, because the unions are really the only thing that is stopping a full-out onslaught like we've seen in Wisconsin. It was bad before Act 10 in 2011. It was a lot of challenges, but it has went up exponentially once we lost the membership of the unions we did, and thereby some of the power. We still exist. We're still here. We're still fighting, but it's not an easy battle. So solidarity with those in the struggle you mentioned in Portland, but we also have a lot of lessons here in Wisconsin that hopefully that do not have to take place there. And we can unite and help them there as well to save public education and the unions in Portland and throughout the United States. So thanks, Rick.
Yeah, indeed. $100 million, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a union. That could be the difference between, existing and not existing, or at the very least having to make decisions like, where is the money for organizing new unions going? Well, if you have to pay $100 million to 4 families that are being represented by this right-wing law firm, well, then there it goes. It's a blow against the union's efforts and organizing and growth and, just all of that. So going to keep you updated on that as much as possible. Also, that's the news for this evening. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Thank you, everyone, for always listening in. If you like what you hear on our show, go ahead and subscribe, share, whatever it is you do. Thank you again for listening. Hopefully, this has been valuable. We'll catch you again next week. Love and solidarity to all. Take care, everyone.